are listening to Stories on the Velvet Audio Stories channel, designed to boost your...
Chapter 11. The Return of the Past. Lena Carter didn't sleep that night. She lay on her bed in her small apartment, staring at the dark ceiling. Streetlights filtered through the window, but her mind held only one image. A boy, trembling, soaked to the bone in the rain. And those eyes, the same eyes she had looked into tonight. Adrian Knight. She sat bolt upright. It's impossible, Lena whispered to herself. But the memory refused to fade. The alleyway, the rain, the bread, the bracelet, and a boy who had said, "One day, I'll find you." Lena buried her face in her hands. Damn it, she didn't know what confused her more, the fact that Adrian was that boy, or the fact that over the last few days, she had actually started to like him. The next morning, Carter Design Office. Lena was hunched over her laptop when Maya walked in. "You look like you haven't slept." Lena took a long sip of coffee. "I haven't." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Is this about Adrian Knight?" Lena looked at her. "You know, this story is going to sound completely insane." Maya sat down. "I like insane." Lena let out a breath. "He's the boy I saved. The one from all those years ago." Maya blinked. "What?" On the other side of the city, Adrian Knight stood in his office. Claire watched him. "You told her." Adrian gave a slight nod. How did she react? Adrian took a sip of his coffee. "Surprised." Claire chuckled. "That sounds like an understatement." Adrian looked out the glass window. "She needs time." Claire tilted her head. "And you?" Adrian was silent for a few seconds. Then he said, "I've waited 15 years. A few more days won't matter." In the afternoon, Lena returned to the Aurelia Hotel. She told herself this was for work. For the penthouse. For the project. But deep down, she knew she was there for another reason. The elevator opened at the penthouse level. She stepped out. The door was already open. Adrian was standing in the living room. Black shirt. Sleeves rolled up. It was as if he had been waiting for her. They looked at each other for a few seconds. Lena spoke first. "You knew I'd come back." Adrian shrugged. "I hoped." Lena walked into the room and set her bag down. "You shouldn't have done that." "Done what?" "Suddenly reappeared in my life like this." Adrian looked at her. "You appeared in mine first." Lena bit her lip. "We only met once." Adrian stepped closer. Once was enough to change everything. The air between them grew heavy. Lena looked down, then back up. "Did you really look for me?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. He simply reached for his wallet and placed the bracelet on the table. The leather was worn. The metal tag was scratched. "What do you think?" Lena stared at the bracelet. A strange sensation surged in her chest. Part memory, part emotion, part something else. She looked at Adrian. "You really kept it for 15 years?" Adrian nodded. "Yeah." Lena whispered, "That's crazy." Adrian gave a faint smile. "Maybe." Lena crossed her arms. "So, what now?" Adrian took another step. There was only a sliver of space left between them. "Now." His voice dropped lower. "I want to know you." Lena looked at him, her heart racing. "You already know me." Adrian shook his head. "No," he said. "I know the girl in the rain." His gaze lingered on her. "But the woman standing in front of me." A pause. "I want to get to know her from the beginning." Lena gave a soft laugh. "Do you always talk like that?" "Like what?" "Like everything is the most important thing in the world." Adrian looked at her. "To me," he said slowly, "you have always been important." The room fell silent. Lena felt her heart thumping against her ribs. Not because of the words themselves, but because of the way he said them. It didn't sound like a pickup line. It sounded like a fact. Finally, Lena let out a breath. "Do you know what's terrifying?" Adrian tilted his head. "What?" Lena looked him straight in the eye. "You." Adrian smiled softly. "I've heard that before." "No," Lena said, "not the normal kind of dangerous." She paused for a second. "The kind of dangerous that makes me want to stay." Year 12. The Promise. Some memories are like ghosts. You think they've finally faded, but they're just waiting. Small moments. People passing through. Words you thought didn't matter. Then, out of nowhere, they come roaring back. Sharp. Vivid. Changing everything you thought you knew. That night, Lena didn't head straight home. She stayed in Adrian's penthouse. Not because she had to. At least, that was the lie she told herself. She made up excuses about blueprints, lighting, and the flow of the space. But they both knew the truth. Neither of them was thinking about interior design. The 45th floor penthouse was swallowed in a heavy, expectant silence. Outside, the city was a neon blur, cars streaking like rivers of fire far below. Adrian stood at the bar, pouring 2 drinks. Not champagne, not a fancy cocktail. Straight whiskey, just like the night they first met. He slid a glass across the marble toward her. "Always the hard stuff?" Lena asked, her voice a little breathless. Adrian shrugged. "Only when I need to think." Lena lifted the glass. "And are you thinking tonight?" Adrian locked his gaze onto hers. "No," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "Tonight, I just want to remember." Lena took a sip. She wasn't much of a whiskey drinker, but the liquid fire sliding down her throat grounded her. "You really spent 15 years looking for me?" she asked. Adrian didn't answer right away. He leaned back against the bar, staring out at the sprawling skyline. "Not every second," he admitted. "There were years where I was too busy to breathe, let alone think." Lena tilted her head, intrigued. "Busy doing what?" Adrian gave a slow, crooked smile. "Becoming the man I told you I'd be." The memory hit her then. A scrawny, broken boy in the pouring rain. Shivering, bleeding, telling her in a voice that barely cracked the silence, "I'll find you one day." Lena looked at him, truly seeing the man he had become. "You did it." "I did all right." Lena shook her head. "No, it's more than just, all right." She gestured to the vast, opulent space. "The power, the empire. You built all of this." Adrian's eyes softened, a look reserved only for her. "No," he said quietly. "I just built a road. A road that led back to you." Lena went still. If any other man had said that, she would have rolled her eyes. She would have called it a cheap line and walked away. But Adrian didn't say it like a pickup artist. He said it like a fundamental truth, one that had anchored him for over a decade. She set her glass down. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I didn't even remember the boy's name." Adrian chuckled softly. "I know, and that doesn't bother you?" He thought about it for a beat, then shook his head. "No. Why?" "Because," Adrian said, his voice like velvet, "you didn't save me so I'd remember you. You just saved me." A wave of warmth radiated through her chest. "I was just passing through that night," she whispered. "I just had a massive blow-up with my mother about, well, life." "Sounds familiar," Adrian noted with a smirk. Lena looked out at the lights. "When I saw that boy, I just thought, no one should have to be that alone." Adrian stepped toward her, slowly, intentionally. "You changed the trajectory of my entire life, Lena." "I just gave you some bread, Adrian." He was only a few feet away now. The air in the room shifted, turning electric and heavy with tension. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't move away, but she didn't close the gap either. "Adrian," she breathed. "Yeah? You're looking at me like I'm the only thing in this room that matters." Adrian's lips quirked into a faint smile. "Maybe you are." Lena let out a shaky breath. "Do you always say things like that?" He shook his head. "Never." "Then why me?" Adrian stared at her. "1 second. 2. 3. Because I spent 15 years trying to find my way back to this exact spot." Lena didn't know how to respond. A part of her wanted to laugh at the sheer insanity of it. Another part wanted to run. But the largest part of her just wanted to stay exactly where she was, looking at the man who had been a shivering boy in the rain and had grown into a king, all while holding onto a worn leather bracelet. She took the final step. Now, they were inches apart. "You know what's crazy?" she asked, her voice a mere whisper. "Tell me, we just met again, officially." "Yeah, and I've already slept in your bed." Adrian's eyes darkened. "Wrong room, remember?" "Right," Lena murmured. "The wrong room." Adrian reached out, his fingers grazing the skin of her wrist, a light touch, but it sent a jolt through her. "Maybe," he said, his voice a low growl. "It wasn't the wrong room at all." Lena swallowed hard. "What are you saying?" "Maybe," he whispered, "we were always supposed to find each other again." Lena looked down at his hand on her wrist, then back up into his ice blue eyes. "So you do believe in destiny?" Adrian leaned in closer, his scent, expensive bourbon and cold night air, swirling around her. "No," he said, "I believe in promises." Lena smiled softly. "You really kept yours." Adrian's gaze dropped to her lips. "You saved me in the rain, Lena. I think I've spent my whole life trying to earn my way back to you." The world outside the glass seemed to stop. Lena's pulse was a frantic rhythm in her ears. It wasn't just the romance of it, it was the raw, undeniable honesty in his eyes. You know what's dangerous about you? She asked. Adrian arched an eyebrow. What? Lena moved a fraction of an inch closer. You. He gave a low, dangerous laugh. So I've been told. No, Lena said, her eyes locked on his. Not the normal kind of dangerous. The kind of dangerous that makes me want to see what happens next. Adrian didn't say a word. He just leaned down, slowly, giving her every chance to back away. But Lena didn't move, and this time, as the space between them finally vanished, neither of them was thinking about the past. They were only in the present. The promise had finally been kept. Chapter 13. Shadows in the Dark. There was a fundamental rule in Adrian Knight's world. Simple, brutal, and absolute. If you have power, you have enemies. Adrian had learned that lesson long ago. For years, he'd operated with a cold indifference to the threats circling him. Enemies didn't scare him. They were just a cost of doing business. They kept him sharp. They kept him busy. But tonight, as Lena Carter stood in the center of his penthouse, the reality of his world felt different. Dangerous. For the first time in a decade, Adrian realized he finally had something to lose. The air in the room was still buzzing with the ghost of their kiss. Lena stayed close to him, too close for comfort, but exactly where she wanted to be. Her heart was still a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She wasn't the type of woman to lose her head in a moment like this, but Adrian Knight had a way of rewriting all her rules. It was his eyes, the way he looked at her like she was the only fixed point in a spinning world. Lena let out a slow, stabilizing breath. Okay, she whispered. So, that happened. Adrian arched an eyebrow, a shadow of a smirk on his face. Are you overanalyzing it already? Yeah, Lena countered, because I don't exactly make a habit of kissing billionaires. Adrian gave a low, dry laugh. And I don't make a habit of kissing designers. Lena watched him for a beat, then shook her head, trying to find her footing. We should slow down, Adrian. He didn't argue, but he didn't back away either. Slow down? Yeah, Lena said. We just found each other again. Everything is moving, fast. Adrian's gaze turned steady, almost unnervingly calm. Do you really think I waited 15 years just to rush through this? Lena blinked. Fair point, but the ghost of a smile vanished from Adrian's face. His mind was already shifting elsewhere. His phone vibrated on the marble counter. Claire. Adrian stared at the screen for a second before picking up. Knight. On the other end, Claire's voice was clipped, urgent. We have a situation. Adrian turned his back to Lena, his posture instantly hardening. What kind of situation? Someone's digging into the Carter files. Adrian went dead silent. His voice dropped to a dangerous, gravelly vibrato. Who? We're not sure yet, Claire said. But someone is looking for a way in through Lena. Adrian stared out at the skyline. The city was still glowing, beautiful and indifferent, but the shadows suddenly looked longer. Keep it locked down, he commanded. Don't let a word of this get to her. Claire hesitated. Mr. Knight, yeah? It looks like they're already moving. They're looking for an opening. Adrian gripped the phone until his knuckles turned white. His eyes went cold, the kind of cold that preceded a storm. No one touches her. Adrian turned back. Lena was still by the glass, her silhouette framed by the city lights. She turned to face him, her intuition sharp. Is something wrong? Adrian weighed his options for a split second. No. Lena narrowed her eyes. You're a terrible liar. Adrian's brow twitched. You can tell? Yeah, Lena said, stepping toward him. You have a something's wrong face. Adrian gave a reluctant, weary smile. I'll have to work on that. Lena closed the distance between them. Adrian. Yeah? Do you have enemies? A simple question. A lethal answer. Yes, he said. Quite a few. Lena shrugged, her expression unfazed. All right. Adrian frowned. Just, all right. Yeah, Lena said. I'm working for you. It's a given that you've got people gunning for you. Adrian studied her. Doesn't it scare you? Lena thought about it, then gave him a small, hauntingly beautiful smile. You know, she said. I saved a boy in a dark alley when I was 15. Adrian tilted his head. And, after that night, Lena whispered, there isn't much left in this world that scares me. Adrian felt a surge of warmth and raw protective instinct collide in his chest. She was strong. She was kind. And she had absolutely no idea that she had just become his greatest vulnerability. Adrian stepped in, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. Lena, yeah? Maybe you aren't afraid, he said, his voice a low, jagged rasp. But I am. Lena's brow furrowed. What are you afraid of? Adrian looked at her for a long, aching moment, uttering words he never thought he'd say. I'm terrified of losing you. Chapter 14. Abduction. There was one thing Lena Carter knew for sure about life. The worst things always happen on perfectly ordinary days. There are no warning signs. No dramatic soundtrack. Just an afternoon like any other. And then, the world tilts on its axis. Carter Design Studio, 5:30 p.m. The office was winding down. Most of the staff had already headed out. Maya was gathering her blueprints, glancing over at Lena, who was still glued to her laptop. Aren't you going home? Lena didn't look up. 10 more minutes. Maya laughed, shaking her head. You said that an hour ago. Lena shrugged, a tired smile tugging at her lips. Billionaire's penthouse, Maya, high pressure. Maya arched an eyebrow. Are we talking about the design, or the man? Lena shot her a playful glare. Don't even start. Maya threw her hands up in mock surrender. All right. She grabbed her purse. Just don't stay too late. I won't, Lena promised. Drive safe. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the studio. Lena let out a long breath, finally standing up to stretch. She walked to the window, looking down at the street. The sun had dipped below the skyline, and the street lights were flickering to life. A sudden chill crawled up her spine. A sensation of being watched. Lena spun around. Empty. You're just being paranoid, she muttered to herself. On the other side of the city, 80th floor, Claire burst into Adrian's office. She was a woman who prided herself on being unflappable, but right now, she was nearly at a sprint. Adrian looked up, his brow furrowing at her expression. What is it? We lost track of her. Adrian's eyes narrowed instantly. Lena? Claire nodded, her breath hitching. Her phone is dead. The street cameras in her district went dark for a 3-minute window. Adrian stood up, slowly. Too slowly. It was the kind of stillness that signaled a lethal storm. How long? 15 minutes. Adrian looked at Claire, his gaze turning to ice. The car, he commanded, his voice a low vibration. Now. Carter Design Studio. Lena was packing her bag when she heard the door chime. She turned, expecting Maya had forgotten her keys. Instead, a man stood there. Gray suit. Tall. Built like a wall. Lena frowned, her hand tightening on her bag. I'm sorry, we're closed for the day. The man didn't say a word. He stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind him. Lena felt the air leave the room. What do you want? The man scanned the office with clinical indifference before settling his gaze on her. You're Lena Carter. It wasn't a question. It was an identification. Lena crossed her arms, trying to keep her voice steady. I am. And who are you? The man gave a thin, joyless smile. Just someone who needs to talk. We can talk tomorrow, Lena said, moving toward the exit. The man was faster. He blocked the door in a single, fluid motion. Lena stopped dead, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. What are you doing? The man tilted his head. You're smart. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Lena took a cautious step back. Who do you work for? The man chuckled. Do you really not know? Lena swallowed hard. A single name flashed in her mind. Adrian, but she didn't let it slip. We just need you to come with us, the man said. No, Lena snapped, her voice sharp. The man let out a weary sigh. Pity. He raised a hand. Suddenly, a second man emerged from the shadows behind her. She hadn't even heard him enter. Damn it. A cloth was shoved over her mouth. The pungent, chemical stench of chloroform burned her lungs. Lena fought, clawing at the hands holding her, but her limbs quickly turned to lead. The room began to spin. The sounds of the city faded into a dull hum. Before everything went black, one thought flickered in her mind. Adrian. 20 minutes later, Adrian's black sedan screeched to a halt in front of the studio. He was out of the door before the car had even fully stopped. The studio door was unlocked. Lights were still on, but inside, it was hollow. Adrian stepped in, his eyes scanning the room with predatory precision. Lena's bag was still on the table. Her laptop was still open, but the girl was gone. Claire followed him in, her face pale. Street cams show a black van leaving the alley 3 minutes before we arrived. Adrian didn't speak. He walked over to the spot where a white cloth lay discarded on the floor. He picked it up, the faint chemical odor hitting his senses. Claire saw his expression. Abduction. Adrian stood motionless for a few seconds, the silence in the room becoming deafening. When he finally turned to Claire, his eyes were colder than she had ever seen them. a void of pure, calculated rage. "Lock down the city," he said. Claire nodded. "I'm on it." Adrian pulled out his phone, dialing a number he only used in emergencies. When the person on the other end picked up, his voice was a low, lethal rasp. "Find her." A moment of silence. Adrian's grip on the phone tightened until the glass groaned. "I don't care who you have to burn or what you have to destroy," he said, his eyes darkening to the color of a midnight sea. "Bring Lena Carter back to me. Now." Chapter 15. The Billionaire's War. There's a fundamental truth that most people fail to grasp about Adrian Knight. They see the net worth. They see the sheer power. They see the steel and glass towers etched with his name and the billion-dollar contracts signed with his hand. But they don't see the man behind the machine. They don't see the boy who once lay dying in a frozen alleyway. That boy learned a lethal lesson early in life. If the world tries to crush you, you have to become strong enough to break the world. And tonight, the world had just touched the only thing Adrian had forbidden it to touch. Lena Carter, the command center, 80th floor. A massive wall of monitors flickered with life. City maps, traffic feeds, encrypted cellular data, license plate recognition. Claire stood at the center of the storm as her analysts worked with a frantic, desperate energy. The van was picked up by 3 separate cameras, one specialist shouted. It vanished near the industrial district on the west side. Claire turned to Adrian. "We have a heading." Adrian stood behind her, his hands braced against the table. His gaze was fixed on the screens, eyes like liquid nitrogen. "Too cold. Dead quiet." "How long?" he asked. 30 minutes to pinpoint the exact structure." "No." Adrian's voice was a low, jagged rasp. 15. The specialist swallowed hard, his hands trembling over the keyboard. "Sir, we're trying." Adrian cut him off without looking up. "I don't pay you to try." The room went tomb silent. Claire watched him, a chill settling in her bones. She had worked for Adrian for 6 years, through hostile takeovers and corporate warfare. But she had never seen him like this. This wasn't anger. This was an executioner's focus. An abandoned warehouse, outskirts of the city. Lena Carter woke up. Her head felt like it had been split open with a sledgehammer. The room was a void, lit only by a single, flickering fluorescent bulb. She was bound to a heavy wooden chair, her wrists raw against the zip ties behind her back. Lena blinked, forcing the fog out of her mind. The studio, the man, the chemical sting of the cloth. She cursed under her breath. Damn it. Finally awake. A voice drifted from the shadows. Lena turned her head. It was him. The man in the gray suit. The one who had taken her. He stepped into the sickly light. "Hello, Lena Carter." Lena looked him up and down, her voice remarkably steady. "You know," she said, "I'm having a really shitty day." The man gave a dry, humorless laugh. "You can thank your boyfriend for that." Lena narrowed her eyes. "Boyfriend?" "Adrian Knight." Lena shook her head. "You've got the wrong girl." The man leaned down, his face inches from hers. "You think I'm stupid?" Lena didn't flinch. She just stared. The man straightened up. "Knight ruined a few of our business ventures. He thinks he's untouchable." He shrugged. "So, we decided to ruin his day instead." Lena let out a slow breath. "Do you honestly think kidnapping me was a smart move?" The man smiled. "Smart? Maybe not. But effective? Absolutely." The highway. Adrian's black sedan tore through the night at a lethal speed, followed by a convoy of 4 SUVs, his private security detail. Claire sat in the passenger seat, her phone glowing. "We found the van," she said. "West Industrial. Abandoned warehouse near the docks." Adrian stared out the window at the blurred city lights. "Status? 6 hostiles on site." Adrian nodded, his jaw set in stone. "Get ready." Claire looked at him, her heart racing. "Adrian." "Yeah? What are you planning to do?" Adrian turned his head. His eyes were dark, swirling with a silent, predatory rage. "I'm bringing her home." Claire swallowed hard. "And the men inside?" Adrian's response was chillingly calm. "They made a mistake." Claire understood. And it made her blood run cold. The warehouse. Lena was still fighting the restraints when Gray Suit took a call. He listened for a few seconds, then a slow, twisted grin spread across his face. "Interesting." Lena frowned. "What?" The man hung up. "Adrian Knight is on his way." Lena felt a surge of hope, but she kept her expression guarded. "Then you should probably start running." The man burst into a loud, mocking laugh. "You think we're afraid of him?" Lena looked him dead in the eye, her voice a cold whisper. No, I think you've just never seen him truly angry. Outside, the SUVs screeched to a halt, boxing in the warehouse. Adrian stepped out first. The night wind whipped at his hair as he calmly buttoned his suit jacket. Claire stood by his side. 6 men inside, Adrian. High-caliber weapons. Adrian adjusted his cuffs, his movements precise and terrifyingly normal. Doesn't matter, Adrian. No one, he said, his voice a low, lethal promise, touches her. The warehouse doors didn't just open, they were blown off their hinges. Adrian's security team flooded the space like a tidal wave. Gunfire echoed against the corrugated metal. Screams followed. Lena jumped at the sound. Gray's suit spun around, reaching for his weapon. What the hell? The back door slammed open. Adrian Knight stepped into the light. The glare from behind him cast him in silhouette, a dark, towering figure of vengeance. But Lena knew him instantly. Adrian. Gray's suit gave a shaky, defiant laugh. So, the king finally leaves his castle. Adrian didn't say a word. He didn't even look at the man. His eyes were fixed solely on Lena. Bound, bruised, but still holding her head high. Still unbroken. Their eyes locked. Lena spoke in a soft, jagged breath. I told them to run. Adrian gave a ghost of a smile, a cold, dangerous thing. Then he turned his gaze to Gray's suit. His voice was a low, guttural vibration that shook the room. You laid hands on my woman. A heavy, suffocating silence followed. Adrian took one step forward, his presence filling every inch of the warehouse. And that, he whispered, was your final mistake.
Subscribe now and continue listening to the next part of this unforgettable love story.